Nobody noticed the kid in seat 11F. Messy hair, cartoon shirt, stuffed toy in her lap. Just another child flying alone. Then the airplane started falling from the sky. When F-22 fighter jets called her secret call sign over the radio, every passenger stared in disbelief at the little girl. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. Nobody looked twice at the girl in seat 11F. She had messy brown hair pulled into a ponytail, wore a faded NASA t-shirt, and clutched a stuffed astronaut toy. Her sneakers didn't even touch the floor. To every passenger on Delta Flight 2847 from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C., she was just another kid flying alone, probably going to visit divorced parents or grandparents. The flight attendant, Jessica Martinez, checked on her during boarding. "Are you doing okay, sweetie? This is your first time flying alone?" "Yes, ma'am," the girl replied softly. "My dad is picking me up in D.C. "Well, if you need anything, just press this button, okay?" Jessica smiled and moved on to help other passengers. The girl's name was Emma Chen, according to her boarding pass. She was 12 years old. She read a comic book about superheroes. She sipped apple juice. She colored in a space-themed coloring book. She was exactly what everyone expected to see, a normal kid on a normal flight. What nobody knew was that Emma Chen held the most classified position in the United States Air Force. At 12 years old, she was the youngest combat pilot in American military history. Her call sign was Falcon, and she had been flying advanced fighter jets since she was 10 years old. Emma's small size and unique brain development made her perfect for piloting next-generation aircraft that adult pilots couldn't handle. The G-forces that would knock out grown men barely affected her developing body. Her reaction time was 40% faster than any adult pilot ever tested. Her spatial awareness was described by military scientists as unprecedented. But Emma's work was so secret that even the president only knew her as Project Nightingale. Only 17 people in the entire Department of Defense knew that America's most advanced stealth fighter was being tested by a 7th grader who still had a bedtime and couldn't reach the pedals without special modifications. To her family, Emma attended a special boarding school for gifted students in Nevada. They didn't know that school was actually Nellis Air Force Base, where she flew missions that would terrify experienced combat pilots. Captain Rachel Foster had been flying commercial aircraft for 15 years. She had over 12,000 flight hours and had never experienced a serious emergency. That perfect record was about to end. Delta Flight 2847 was cruising smoothly at 37,000 feet over Colorado when Captain Foster noticed something wrong. "Mark," she said to her first officer, Mark Sullivan, "are you seeing this vibration?" First Officer Sullivan checked his instruments. "Yeah, I feel it. Engine 2 is showing unusual readings." Before they could investigate further, warning alarms erupted throughout the cockpit. Engine 2 was losing power rapidly, and Engine 1 was beginning to show problems too. "We have a serious situation," Captain Foster announced, her voice calm despite rising fear. "I'm declaring an emergency. Denver Center, Delta 2847, we are declaring an emergency. We have dual engine problems and are losing power. Delta 2847, Denver Center copies your emergency. What are your intentions? We need immediate vectors to the nearest suitable airport. We may not be able to maintain altitude much longer." In the passenger cabin, people were beginning to notice that something was wrong. The airplane was shaking more than normal, and the engine sounds were changing. Fear spread through the cabin as passengers looked at each other nervously. In seat 11F, Emma felt the problems immediately. Her training had taught her to recognize every sound and movement of aircraft in trouble. She knew that Delta Flight 2847 was in serious danger. Both engines were failing, which meant this aircraft might not make it to any airport. But Emma's orders were absolute: never reveal her identity under any circumstances. Too many classified programs depended on her remaining anonymous. Even if it meant staying silent while 189 people died. When Delta Flight 2847 declared an emergency over Colorado, the North American Aerospace Defense Command immediately began monitoring the situation. Any commercial aircraft in distress near military airspace automatically received attention from NORAD. "Sir," reported Lieutenant James Park to Colonel Sandra Mitchell at NORAD Command, "we have a commercial aircraft declaring emergency. Dual engine failure over Colorado. They're requesting emergency landing at Peterson Space Force Base." "What's their status?" Colonel Mitchell asked. "Delta 2847, 189 souls on board, losing altitude fast. They won't make it to Denver. Scramble the alert fighters immediately," Colonel Mitchell ordered. "Get them up there for escort and assessment." Within 3 minutes, 2 F-22 Raptor fighters from the 302nd Fighter Squadron screamed into the sky. Major Lisa "Viper" Rodriguez and Captain Tom "Hawk" Bradley were experienced pilots who had performed dozens of civilian aircraft escorts. Denver Center, Raptor 1 and Raptor 2 airborne, climbing to intercept Delta 2847, Major Rodriguez transmitted. "Raptor flight, Delta 2847 is at flight level 310 and descending. Provide escort and situation assessment." The F-22 pilots expected a routine escort mission. They had no idea they were about to witness something that would change military aviation forever. As the F-22s climbed toward their target, NORAD was conducting standard security checks on the passenger manifest. What they discovered made Colonel Mitchell grab her secure phone immediately. "Colonel," said Technical Sergeant Robert Kim, "you need to see this passenger list right now." "What is it?" "Passenger in seat 11F is listed as Emma Chen, age 12. But when I ran that name through our classified databases, something impossible came up." Colonel Mitchell looked at the screen and felt her heart stop. According to the classified files, Emma Chen was a combat pilot with the highest security clearance in the military. According to the passenger manifest, Emma Chen was in 7th grade. "That has to be a database error," Mitchell said. "Run it again." "I've run it 6 times, ma'am." Emma Chen, age 12, call sign Falcon, assigned to Project Nightingale at Nellis Air Force Base. She has clearance levels that most generals don't have. Colonel Mitchell stared at the information. Project Nightingale was one of the most secret programs in American military history. It involved testing aircraft so advanced that their existence was denied even when evidence appeared. And according to these files, the test pilot was a child. "Get me a secure line to Nellis immediately," Mitchell ordered. "I need confirmation on this right now." The call to Nellis Air Force Base confirmed everything and made the situation even more complicated. Emma Chen really was 12 years old. She really was a combat pilot. And she really was aboard a commercial aircraft that was about to crash. "Colonel," said General Marcus Webb from Nellis, "if that aircraft goes down with Falcon aboard, we lose our most valuable asset and compromise multiple classified programs. Every mission she's flown, every aircraft she's tested, everything could be exposed." "Understood, sir," Mitchell replied. "We'll do everything possible to help them land safely." "There's something else," General Webb said quietly. "If that aircraft is going to crash anyway, Falcon has skills that could save everyone aboard. But using those skills means exposing her identity and ending her career." "What are you saying, sir?" "I'm saying that 12-year-old girl knows more about emergency flying than most pilots learn in 30 years. She can land aircraft that shouldn't be landable. But if she helps, her secret life is over. What should we do?" "Nothing," General Webb said. "The decision has to be hers. She knows the rules. She knows what's at stake. We can't order her to break cover, even to save lives." Aboard Delta Flight 2847, the situation was becoming desperate. Both engines were now producing almost zero power. The aircraft was essentially a glider, and not a very good one. "We're not going to make it to Peterson," First Officer Sullivan said grimly. "We're losing altitude too fast. Peterson is only 15 miles away, Captain Foster replied, fighting to control the powerless aircraft. We have to try. That's when an unusual transmission came through on a frequency that commercial aircraft could monitor but rarely used. Delta 2847, this is Raptor 1. We understand you have Emma Chen aboard your aircraft. We need to speak with Falcon immediately. In seat 11F, Emma felt like the world had stopped. Her secret call sign had just been broadcast, and everyone with a radio had heard it. The businessman next to her was staring at her in confusion. Did they just call you Falcon? He asked in disbelief. Before Emma could answer, Captain Foster's voice came over the intercom, confused but desperate. Emma Chen, this is Captain Foster. If you can help us, we need you in the cockpit right now. Every passenger turned to stare at the 12-year-old girl with the stuffed astronaut. They couldn't understand how a child could possibly help with an aircraft emergency. But something in the captain's voice told them this was life or death. Emma unbuckled her seatbelt. She left her stuffed astronaut in the seat. She walked toward the cockpit, knowing that her secret life was about to end, but 189 people might live because of it. When Emma entered the cockpit, Captain Foster and First Officer Sullivan stared at her in complete disbelief. They had expected an adult pilot, not a kid who looked like she should be in middle school. Are you really Emma Chen? Captain Foster asked. Yes, ma'am, Emma replied, her voice still sounding like a normal kid. And you're really a pilot? Yes, ma'am. I fly fighter jets for the Air Force. First Officer Sullivan looked at Emma like she was crazy. How can a 12-year-old fly fighter jets? Because I fit in aircraft that adults can't fly, Emma explained simply. And because my reaction time is faster than grown-ups. And because I've been training since I was 8 years old. Emma looked at the instrument panel and immediately began analyzing the situation with expertise that shocked the commercial pilots. Despite being so young and small that she had to stand on her toes to see clearly, she processed the emergency with the skill of someone who had dealt with aircraft failures many times. What's our altitude? Emma asked. 18,000 feet and descending fast, Captain Foster replied. We have maybe 10 minutes before we're too low to reach Peterson. Fuel status. We have fuel, but both engines are completely dead. We're flying a brick. Emma did rapid calculations in her head. We can make it to Peterson, but we need to fly this aircraft like a glider. The techniques I'll teach you aren't in any commercial training manual. Raptor 1, this is Falcon, Emma transmitted on the military frequency, using her call sign for the first time in front of civilians. I'm taking advisory control of this emergency. Falcon, Raptor 1, ma'am, it's an honor to work with you, Major Rodriguez replied, her voice filled with respect despite knowing she was talking to a 12-year-old. What do you need from us? Raptor Flight, I need real-time weather data for Peterson. I need winds at all altitudes from here to the runway. And I need emergency equipment standing by for a dead-stick landing. Roger, Falcon. We have you covered. What happened next was unprecedented in aviation history. A 12-year-old girl began coordinating the emergency landing of a commercial airliner while being escorted by two of the most advanced fighter jets ever built. Captain Foster, Emma said, turning to the commercial pilot with calm authority, I'm going to teach you how to fly a dead aircraft. These are techniques we use when everything fails completely. But you're just a kid, First Officer Sullivan protested. I'm a kid who has landed fighter jets with no engines, no hydraulics, and no electrical power, Emma replied calmly. I've done this dozens of times. Trust me. Captain Foster looked at Emma's serious expression and made a decision. Okay, Emma. What do we do? As Emma worked with the Delta crew, the F-22 pilots were learning more about the remarkable child who was saving Flight 2847. Back at NORAD, classified files were being shared that painted an incredible picture. Raptor 1, NORAD Command, came the secure transmission. We're sending you classified information about Falcon. You need to understand who you're working with. Major Rodriguez and Captain Bradley received data that amazed them. Emma Falcon Chen wasn't just a test pilot. She was the primary pilot for Project Nightingale, flying aircraft that were decades ahead of anything the public knew existed. Falcon has more emergency landing experience than most pilots get in their entire careers, the briefing explained. She's successfully landed aircraft that adult pilots said were unflyable. Her success rate in impossible situations is 100%. Hawk, are you reading this? Major Rodriguez asked her wingman. I can't believe it, Captain Bradley replied. We're being guided by a 7th grader who flies aircraft that don't officially exist. Look at her training record. She's done things that would terrify most combat pilots. And now she's saving a commercial flight using techniques that probably aren't supposed to exist. What Emma did next demonstrated why she had been chosen for the most dangerous test flights in military aviation. Using techniques developed for experimental aircraft that regularly lost all power, she began teaching Captain Foster how to fly a powerless Boeing 757 like a glider. Captain Foster, forget everything you know about engine-out procedures, Emma instructed. We're going to fly this aircraft using only gravity and physics. No power, no problem. She guided Captain Foster through maneuvers that commercial pilots never learned. These were techniques for flying dead aircraft that had been developed through years of testing experimental planes that often suffered complete system failures. We're going to manage our energy like a sailplane, Emma explained. Every bit of altitude is potential energy. We trade it for distance and speed, but we have to be perfect. We won't get a second chance. This isn't how we're trained, First Officer Sullivan said nervously. Commercial training assumes you have some engine power, Emma replied. When everything is dead, you need different techniques. I'm going to teach you how to fly when nothing works. The F-22 pilots watched in amazement as the powerless commercial aircraft began gliding toward Peterson Space Force Base under the guidance of a 12-year-old who flew like she had been born in a cockpit. Viper, are you seeing this? Captain Bradley asked. I can't believe what I'm watching, Major Rodriguez replied. She's flying that 757 better than most pilots fly with full power. Look at her energy management. It's perfect. As Delta Flight 2847 approached Peterson Space Force Base, Emma coordinated every aspect of the landing with precision that amazed military and civilian controllers alike. Peterson Tower, Delta 2847 Heavy, emergency inbound with total power loss, Emma transmitted. We are using experimental gliding procedures. Request emergency equipment standing by. Delta 2847, Peterson Tower, we have you on radar. All emergency equipment is positioned. Runway 17 is cleared. You are cleared for emergency landing. Raptor flight, Emma transmitted to the F-22s, I need you to fly alongside us during final approach. Call out any deviations from glide path. With no power, we can't correct mistakes. Roger, Falcon. We're with you all the way down. At 5,000 feet, Emma began implementing the final phase of her emergency plan. These were techniques that had been developed for landing experimental aircraft with complete power failure, techniques that had never been attempted with a commercial airliner. Captain Foster, what I'm about to teach you isn't in any manual, Emma said. But it works. I've done this 53 times in fighter jets. Now we do it in a 757. The approach to Peterson's runway 17 was unlike anything in commercial aviation history. Emma guided Captain Foster through a landing technique that balanced physics, mathematics, and instinct in ways that conventional training never taught. Keep our airspeed exactly at 145 knots, Emma instructed as they descended through 1,000 feet. Too fast and we overshoot the runway. Too slow and we stall and crash. The technique was so advanced that most military pilots had never even heard of it. But Emma's experience with experimental aircraft that regularly lost all power had taught her to land aircraft that shouldn't be landable. Falcon, Raptor 1, Major Rodriguez transmitted. Your glide path is perfect. Rate of descent is ideal. You're doing amazing. Thanks, Raptor 1. Captain Foster, you're doing great. Trust the physics. Trust the aircraft. Trust yourself. At 500 feet, First Officer Sullivan was gripping his armrests so hard his knuckles were white. We're coming in too fast. No, we're not, Emma said calmly. This is exactly right. Watch. At 200 feet, a crosswind gust tried to push the aircraft off the runway centerline. Captain Foster started to panic, but Emma's calm voice guided him through. Small correction with rudder. Don't overcorrect. Let the aircraft settle naturally. Perfect. Hold it steady. The Boeing 757 touched down on the runway harder than normal, but Captain Foster managed to keep it straight and under control. Without engine thrust reversers, the aircraft rolled longer than usual, but Emma had calculated the landing perfectly. They stopped with 800 feet of runway remaining. Delta 2847, outstanding job. Peterson Tower transmitted. Emergency equipment is approaching your aircraft. In the passenger cabin, 189 people erupted in applause and tears. Most of them still couldn't believe they had been saved by a 12-year-old girl. As Delta Flight 2847 came to a complete stop, something unprecedented happened in military aviation. Both F-22 pilots came to attention in their cockpits, a gesture of respect normally reserved only for high-ranking officers. Falcon, Raptor 1, Major Rodriguez transmitted, her voice filled with emotion. That was the most incredible display of flying skill we have ever witnessed. You just saved 189 lives using techniques that most adults couldn't imagine. It was an honor to fly with you, ma'am. Thank you, Raptor Flight, Emma replied, her voice still sounding like a normal kid. Just doing my job. But it wasn't just doing her job. What Emma had accomplished was extraordinary by any measure. She had taken command of a civilian aircraft emergency, used highly classified techniques, and saved 189 lives, all while maintaining the calm professionalism that had made her legendary in military test programs. As passengers deplaned, many stopped to thank Emma personally. The businessman from seat 11E was among the first. I still can't believe you're really 12 years old, he said in amazement. Where did you learn to fly like that? Emma smiled with the innocent expression that had helped her maintain her cover for so long. I go to a really good school. Within hours of the emergency landing, Emma's secret identity was completely exposed. News of the 12-year-old fighter pilot who had saved a commercial flight spread around the world. Kid pilot saves 189 lives, read the headlines. 12-year OLD fighter pilot emerges from secret program, wrote journalists trying to understand how a child could possess such advanced skills. But Emma's exposure created serious problems for national security. Her work on classified programs was so sensitive that her identity had been protected at the highest levels of government. Now her cover was blown, potentially compromising ongoing projects and military advantages. Emma, said General Marcus Webb during an emergency briefing at Peterson, your actions saved 189 lives. But they also compromised some of our most important programs. Every mission you've flown is now under scrutiny. I'm sorry, General, Emma replied quietly. But I couldn't let all those people die just to keep my secret. We're not criticizing you, General Webb assured her. But we need to figure out what happens next. Your career as a secret test pilot is obviously finished. The whole world knows about you now. The military faced an unprecedented situation. Their most valuable test pilot had been exposed in the most public way possible, but her actions had saved nearly 200 civilian lives. 2 weeks after the Delta Flight 2847 incident, Emma was offered a choice that would change her life forever. She could retire from military service with full honors, or she could accept a completely different role that would use her skills in a public way. Emma, said General Webb during a meeting at the Pentagon, we're offering you something that has never been offered to someone your age. You can become the youngest official instructor for aviation safety, helping teach other pilots the techniques you use to save Flight 2847. The assignment was unprecedented. For the first time, a 12-year-old would openly work with both military and civilian aviation authorities, using her experience to improve safety training for pilots around the world. Your actions prove that advanced techniques can save civilian lives, General Webb explained. We want you to help develop training programs that will teach these techniques to commercial pilots everywhere. Emma accepted immediately. Her secret life was over, but she could now serve her country in a new way that honored both her military training and her desire to help people. Can I still fly fighters? Emma asked. Even more than before, General Webb smiled. But now you'll also be teaching others what you've learned. 6 months after the incident, Emma was teaching special courses at training centers around the country. She stood on a small platform so she could reach the podium while addressing rooms full of experienced commercial pilots. Her students were seasoned aviators with decades of experience who were learning advanced emergency procedures from a 12-year-old who had saved 189 lives. The techniques you'll learn today, Emma told her first class of adult pilots, were developed for aircraft that lose all power. These procedures can save lives when normal methods don't work. She used Delta Flight 2847 as a detailed teaching example, walking the pilots through every decision and explaining the reasoning behind techniques that had never been used in commercial aviation. When I walked into that cockpit, she explained, I had never flown a 757 before. But I understood the physics of flying dead aircraft. I could teach that knowledge to pilots who knew the 757 but had never dealt with total power failure. The adult pilots were amazed by Emma's knowledge. Despite her young age and the fact that she needed a step stool to write on the whiteboard, she demonstrated techniques that surpassed anything they had learned in decades of flying. Emma asked United Airlines Captain Robert Martinez, a veteran with over 25,000 flight hours, how do you stay so calm during emergencies? Most adults would panic. Because I've been flying aircraft that break all the time, Emma replied with simple honesty. When you expect things to go wrong, you're always ready. Plus, in test flying, if you panic, you die. So you learn not to panic. Her direct answers made the pilots realize that Emma's age was actually an advantage. She could explain complicated procedures in simple terms that everyone could understand and remember under pressure. The training program Emma developed became a model for aviation safety worldwide. Airlines sent their best pilots to learn the techniques that had saved Flight 2847. Emma Chen has revolutionized aviation safety, said Federal Aviation Administration Director Patricia Morgan. Her techniques could save thousands of lives. Within a year, commercial pilots using Emma's methods had successfully landed aircraft with failures that would have been impossible to survive before. We've had 7 incidents where pilots used Emma's techniques to save aircraft that would have crashed, reported the FAA. Her program is literally saving lives every month. 2 years after the Delta Flight 2847 incident, 14-year-old Emma was promoted to the youngest advisory position in Air Force history. Her mission was to continue developing emergency procedures for both military and civilian pilots. Emma represents a new model for military service, said Air Force Chief of Staff General David Chen during a ceremony at the Air Force Academy. She demonstrates that our most advanced capabilities should serve both national security and public safety. The ceremony was attended by many people whose lives Emma had touched. Captain Foster and First Officer Sullivan spoke about how Emma's techniques had been incorporated into Delta's training programs. Emma didn't just save our aircraft, Captain Foster told the crowd. She changed how our entire industry thinks about emergency procedures. Major Rodriguez and Captain Bradley, the F-22 pilots who had escorted Flight 2847, also attended. They were now instructors in Emma's joint training program. Working with Falcon during that emergency was the highlight of my career, Major Rodriguez said. She showed us that the best techniques should be available to anyone who needs them. 5 years after the incident, 17-year-old Emma was selected as the youngest person ever to receive the Congressional Gold Medal for her contributions to aviation safety. Her techniques were now standard training for pilots worldwide. Emma Chen has fundamentally changed aviation safety, said NASA Administrator Dr. Sarah Kim during the medal ceremony. Her work has saved thousands of lives and will continue saving lives for generations. The passengers from Delta Flight 2847 never forgot the girl who saved them. Many attended Emma's medal ceremony, including the businessman from Seat 11E. Emma taught me that heroes come in all ages, he said during the ceremony. She looked like a normal kid, but she was actually one of the most skilled pilots in the world. Today, Emma Falcon Chen continues to serve in the Air Force while finishing her engineering degree at MIT. At 19, she's already one of the most influential voices in aviation safety worldwide. Her techniques are taught at flight schools everywhere, and her story inspires young people to pursue careers in aviation and military service. The most important lesson from my experience, Emma tells students who visit her, is that age doesn't matter when people need help. What matters is having knowledge and courage to use it. Her office displays a photo from Delta Flight 2847, not of the emergency landing, but of her sitting in Seat 11F with her stuffed astronaut, looking like any normal kid. It reminds her that extraordinary abilities can hide behind ordinary appearances. The F-22 Raptors that escorted Flight 2847 continue flying missions worldwide. But the pilots who fly them know that one of their most important missions was the day they stood at attention for a 12-year-old who proved that heroes come in all sizes. In airports around the world, passengers board aircraft without knowing their safety depends partly on techniques developed by someone who once sat in Seat 11F looking like just another kid visiting family. She was just a kid at 37,000 feet, wearing a NASA t-shirt and reading comics. But when 189 people needed help, Emma Falcon Chen became exactly what she had always been, a pilot whose skills commanded respect from F-22 fighters and whose knowledge could save anyone brave enough to fly. The secret world of experimental aviation lost its youngest pilot. But the world of aviation safety gained something far more important, a teacher whose knowledge will protect travelers for generations to come. 20 years after that fateful day, Captain Emma Falcon Chen stands at the memorial ceremony for Delta Flight 2847. She's 32 now, a full colonel in the Air Force, and the Director of Aviation Safety for both military and civilian operations worldwide. She still looks young for her age, though the messy ponytail has been replaced by a professional style, and the NASA t-shirt traded for a crisp uniform covered in medals and ribbons. Her direct answers made the pilots realize that Emma's age was actually an advantage. She could explain complicated procedures in simple terms that everyone could understand and remember under pressure. The training program Emma developed became a model for aviation safety worldwide. Airlines sent their best pilots to learn the techniques that had saved Flight 2847. Emma Chen has revolutionized aviation safety, said Federal Aviation Administration Director Patricia Morgan. Her techniques could save thousands of lives. Within a year, commercial pilots using Emma's methods had successfully landed aircraft with failures that would have been impossible to survive before. We've had 7 incidents where pilots used Emma's techniques to save aircraft that would have crashed, reported the FAA. Her program is literally saving lives every month. 2 years after the Delta Flight 2847 incident, 14-year-old Emma was promoted to the youngest advisory position in Air Force history. Her mission was to continue developing emergency procedures for both military and civilian pilots. Emma represents a new model for military service, said Air Force Chief of Staff General David Chen during a ceremony at the Air Force Academy. She demonstrates that our most advanced capabilities should serve both national security and public safety. The ceremony was attended by many people whose lives Emma had touched. Captain Foster and First Officer Sullivan spoke about how Emma's techniques had been incorporated into Delta's training programs. Emma didn't just save our aircraft, Captain Foster told the crowd. She changed how our entire industry thinks about emergency procedures. Major Rodriguez and Captain Bradley, the F-22 pilots who had escorted Flight 2847, also attended. They were now instructors in Emma's joint training program. Working with Falcon during that emergency was the highlight of my career, Major Rodriguez said. She showed us that the best techniques should be available to anyone who needs them. 5 years after the incident, 17-year-old Emma was selected as the youngest person ever to receive the Congressional Gold Medal for her contributions to aviation safety. Her techniques were now standard training for pilots worldwide. Emma Chen has fundamentally changed aviation safety, said NASA Administrator Dr. Sarah Kim during the medal ceremony. Her work has saved thousands of lives and will continue saving lives for generations. The passengers from Delta Flight 2847 never forgot the girl who saved them. Many attended Emma's medal ceremony, including the businessman from Seat 11E. Emma taught me that heroes come in all ages, he said during the ceremony. She looked like a normal kid, but she was actually one of the most skilled pilots in the world. Today, Emma Falcon Chen continues to serve in the Air Force while finishing her engineering degree at MIT. At 19, she's already one of the most influential voices in aviation safety worldwide. Her techniques are taught at flight schools everywhere, and her story inspires young people to pursue careers in aviation and military service. The most important lesson from my experience, Emma tells students who visit her, is that age doesn't matter when people need help. What matters is having knowledge and courage to use it. Her office displays a photo from Delta Flight 2847, not of the emergency landing, but of her sitting in Seat 11F with her stuffed astronaut, looking like any normal kid. It reminds her that extraordinary abilities can hide behind ordinary appearances. The F-22 Raptors that escorted Flight 2847 continue flying missions worldwide. But the pilots who fly them know that one of their most important missions was the day they stood at attention for a 12-year-old who proved that heroes come in all sizes. In airports around the world, passengers board aircraft without knowing their safety depends partly on techniques developed by someone who once sat in Seat 11F looking like just another kid visiting family. She was just a kid at 37,000 feet, wearing a NASA t-shirt and reading comics. But when 189 people needed help, Emma Falcon Chen became exactly what she had always been, a pilot whose skills commanded respect from F-22 fighters and whose knowledge could save anyone brave enough to fly. The secret world of experimental aviation lost its youngest pilot. But the world of aviation safety gained something far more important, a teacher whose knowledge will protect travelers for generations to come. 20 years after that fateful day, Captain Emma Falcon Chen stands at the memorial ceremony for Delta Flight 2847. She's 32 now, a full colonel in the Air Force, and the Director of Aviation Safety for both military and civilian operations worldwide. She still looks young for her age, though the messy ponytail has been replaced by a professional style, and the NASA t-shirt traded for a crisp uniform covered in medals and ribbons. Around her stand the survivors of Flight 2847, many with their children and grandchildren. The businessman from Seat 11E is there with his teenage daughter, who's now training to be a pilot because of Emma's inspiration. Captain Foster, now retired, stands with his wife, still telling anyone who'll listen about the day a 12-year-old saved his life. 20 years ago, Emma addresses the crowd, I sat in Seat 11F thinking my secret had to be protected at all costs. I was ready to let everyone die rather than break my cover. But something changed when I heard Captain Foster's voice over that intercom. I realized that no secret, no matter how important, is worth more than human life. She pauses, looking at the faces of people who wouldn't be alive without her decision. That day taught me that true service isn't about following orders blindly. It's about knowing when breaking the rules is the right thing to do. It's about choosing humanity over protocol, compassion over career. The crowd applauds as Emma unveils a plaque, in memory of Delta Flight 2847, where courage knew no age, and one decision saved 189 souls. As the ceremony ends, a little girl approaches Emma shyly. She's about 10 years old, wearing an Air Force t-shirt, carrying a toy airplane. Excuse me, Colonel Chen. I want to be a pilot like you someday. Emma kneels down to the girl's level, smiling warmly. What's your name? Sophie. I'm 10. Am I too young to start learning? Emma thinks back to herself at that age, already flying fighters, already carrying secrets that should have been impossible. Sophie, you're never too young to dream. Never too young to learn. And never too young to be a hero when the moment calls for it. She hands Sophie her own wings pin from her uniform. Keep this. And remember, the sky doesn't care how old you are. It only cares how brave you are. As Sophie runs back to her parents, clutching the wings like treasure, Emma watches the families of Flight 2847 gather together, celebrating life, celebrating survival, celebrating the moment when a kid in Seat 11F became a legend. The stuffed astronaut from that day sits in the Smithsonian now, in the Aviation Hall of Heroes, next to Emma's flight suit and a piece of the F-22 that escorted her to safety. The plaque reads, "Sometimes heroes wear cartoon t-shirts and can't reach the floor. Sometimes they're just kids who choose to be brave."